Alrighty, so with the fact that there is no MLS action for 2 more weeks, because as I said many times before in the last couple of video, how stupid this playoffs system is. The fact that after all the excitement that we see in the playoffs, pretty much is completely interrupted because of the international break. The good news is I still do have a chance to get enough time to do some of these moving forward series episode because it's been a while since I've had last talk about a team in the moving forward series episode. So with that being said, we're going to continue this episode talking about each team that's already eliminated, and probably we'll get our chance to even talk about teams that got eliminated in the first round because we have just so much time before the next playoff game. But we're going to talk about St. Louis City today in the Moving Forward series episode. And this season for St. Louis is a prime example of why a great second half run in the previous season doesn't always mean that it led into the beginning of the season as well. We've seen this before where, as great as St. Louis run was in the latter part of 2024, and I even said personally myself the fact that I feel like this is probably the most playoff ready team out of all the teams that, of course, got eliminated in the playoffs back in 2023. I thought this team was most likely going to make it to the playoffs. Obviously, as you can probably tell, it didn't happen. And a big part why it didn't happen is the fact that, there seems to not only be a little bit of problem when it comes to the roster where there's a lot of flaws in this roster. I mean, on paper, there are some talent on this team, but it just never really meshed together well. But I think the elephant in the room of why this season has just been such a disaster is the coaching. I mean, the coaching has been pretty bad, and especially the guy that pretty much hired the coaches. Yeah, he basically got fired from this team a couple of months later, and it's something that St. Louis fans been wanting to do for a very long time. Now, with that being said, they did finish the season with an 8-18 and record, and they finished with 32 points. Actually, let me repeat that: 8-8 and 18. That it's kind of hard to say it when their record is almost the same amount. And really, I feel like for St. Louis, this season is kind of a little bit of a miniature version of last season as well, where just like last season, they got off to such a terrible start to the season, and then they went on that incredible second half resurgence, but it was too late because they dug themselves too much in the hole. It was kind of the same thing this season as well. They really got off to a terrible start to the season. Big part of that is because the coach that they hired, Olaf Melberg, yeah, it turns out he really sucked at his job and does not fit in terms of coaching in MLS. But they got better once they got rid of him. Big part of that is them bring David Critchley playing a more entertaining brand of soccer, but still, they didn't go as a crazy second half resurgence like what we saw in 2024 as it is this year. And we'll also talk about some of the flaws that David Critchley team has with this, and it's kind of the reason why this team is just such in some ways, kind of a bit of a confusing team, and a team that could definitely be better if they have better leadership in terms of the head coaching and even in the upper management team as well. They scored 44 goals this season, but they allow 58 goals. Defense has always been a problem for St. Louis. I think this all goes back to what we saw even near the latter part of the expansion season. As great as the latter part of or as great as the expansion season has been, the latter part of the expansion season, you can not only see some flaws you see with the St. Louis team, but they started to become pretty bad defensively. And in 2024, they were very bad defensively throughout the season. And yeah, they tried to fix it this season. Didn't really quite work out. They still conceded a lot of goals. And if it wasn't for Roman Berkey, it probably would have been more for this team. They finished 13th in the Western Conference this season. Yeah, not great in terms of where they finished. But hey, at least St. Louis fans can proudly say that at least they finished higher than Sporting KC is, which is that was kind of unthinkable because for most of the year, Sporting KC was kind of above them, but because Sporting KC kind of took a nosedive near the end of the season and St. Louis got a little better, hey, at least they finished a little bit better than the row itself. Now, when it comes to top goal scored, it's actually João Klaus with 10 goals. I mean, for João Klaus, there was no doubt that this season he kind of rediscovered his old goal scoring form. I mean, I will never forget what João Klaus did when he came into the league. Really like this league on fire, and it's such a shame the fact that if he didn't just suffer that injury in the inaugural season, we would have seen a guy that could be easily a golden boot goal scorer every single season. But that injury that he suffered has really kind of hampered him, and it's been kind of hampering him his time with St. Louis, and it kind of gets to a point where there's kind of almost like a madness opus that St. Louis is going to have to make this offseason of the fact that are they going to keep Joe Claus or are they going to be moving on from him? There are already some interest that teams are looking to try to get him, especially in Liga MX. They could have easily sold him this summer transfer window when there were, I think, was it Juarez the one that was interested in terms of them, and in the end that obviously didn't materialize. So I'm gonna be very interesting to see heading into this offseason whether or not if they're going to set because on paper he is definitely a good number nine, but he's not really a number nine that I would say that is going to be considered to be one of the top five. He's definitely good, but kind of like I would say almost like an upper mid tier number nine that is. Then you got Marcel Hartle with 9 goals, followed by Edouard Leuven with 6 goals, Cedric Teuscher with 3 goals, and Simon Betcher rounds up the top five with 3 goals. Top assist leader, yeah, this team didn't really had a lot of creativity for the most part, though. Marcel Harto definitely play a big part of it. Harto was kind of the guy that especially in the second half this season when Critchley was in, he's kind of playing more as a playmaker kind of role, which is kind of interesting because that's been kind of the role that Leuven used to play for this team. But it feels like Harto is now the main playmaker and the number 10 of this team. He has 6 assists, followed by Conrad Wallen with 4 assists, Joe Klaus with 3 assists, Edouard Leuven with 3 assists, and Cecilio Pompeo also with 3 assists to round up the top five in the top assist leader. Best win of the season. I'm gonna go with the 3-1 win that they had against Nashville on August 9th. That was probably one of the most impressive performance that St. Louis have put. Yes, it did get a little bit iffy right at the end, and I will say that they didn't really play the full 90 minutes. I mean, there wasn't really a lot of performance that I've seen this season that you can say that is considered to be a complete performance by St. Louis, but this was definitely pretty close to being it. And I mean, they were facing against one of the hottest team in MLS in Nashville SC, and they of course took them down in this one and playing something that they look that St. Louis team, the way that they play Nashville that night, that looked like a shades of the Bradley Cartnell St. Louis team of them finishing first in the expansion season. I mean, it was such a fun performance and certainly something that I think St. Louis fan was not only very happy of seeing, but they were hoping that maybe that would be something that they'll see more at least in the future. The worst loss of the season. There was definitely a couple that I could have chose, but in the end, I'm gonna go with the 3-0 loss on the road against FC Dallas on July 19th. The reason why I go with this one is the fact that Dallas, they were really struggling in the middle of the season. I mean, everybody knows about Dallas going on an incredible run. They got themselves into the playoffs as a result, but people forget that this team was off to a really terrible start to the season and was still very mediocre in July. So the fact that St. Louis, I know they weren't doing well themselves, but to go on the road in this game and just kind of had a no show in this one, and especially I've already mentioned how Dallas is a team that tends to not do very well at home at that part of the season. This was kind of a weird team where they always tend to do well on the road, especially in the goal scoring, but not much at home as well. So yeah, it doesn't help the fact that when you go on the road and you're facing against a struggling team and a team that doesn't score a lot of goals, and you basically not only not show up in that game, but gave up 3 goals in that one as well. So yeah, that's got to be a kick in the nuts for St. Louis fan. I mean, I know some St. Louis fan will also feel like there are some resort, especially in the early part of the season, that was very frustrating as well. It's kind of interesting. I did not choose the worst loss of the season when Olaf Melber was in charge because as frustrated as those St. Louis game was under Olaf Melber, at least it was close. I mean, at least it was a kind of games where they at least were in it. This one against Dallas, they really were never in. They just clearly did not show up in this game whatsoever. Now, when it comes to their average attendance, it actually went down a little bit, 22,090, which is good for 14. And what's kind of interesting is that not every single game this season at City Park, or now it's called Energizer Park. I'm always likes to call the old stadium. It does take a while for me to get used to calling the new stadium name. But yeah, this season, not every single game was a sellout. I think near the end of the season, you kind of started to see more empty seats at the stadium. And I don't blame the fact that some St. Louis fans started to not show up to games whatsoever. I mean, it just feels like that new car smell and that new expansion kind boost that we usually see with expansion team get, especially when they do well coming off the gate, it started to wear off on this team. You can start to see some frustration for St. Louis fan, the fact that yeah, things have definitely not gone so well compared to their expansion season. It feels like they're kind of stall out compared to what we saw the magic that they had in their expansion season. Now, looking at MVP of this team, I'm still gonna go with Roman Burki. I know he didn't had the best of the season, but he still was an absolute menace in goal. He is still considered to be one of the top 10, maybe even top 5 goalkeeper in the league, and really kind of the big reason why they didn't concede as many goals as they did. I mean, as bad as that defense was St. Louis this season, the fact that Roman Burki at times just kind of standing on his heads, and how many times I've said throughout the season for St. Louis that I feel bad for him, just kind of getting completely hung out to dry by a non-existent defense. Yeah, get that man a defensive help. And I'm also kind of surprised the fact that Roman Burki decided to stick around as well. I would have assuming he would be so pissed off the fact that he's been getting absolutely no help by his defense throughout this season that he'll walk away because of his contract being ending. But no, he decided to stay put. He's actually still going to be on a DP contract, which yeah, I mean, I don't know if that was the best idea to do so, and we'll talk about that in just a bit. Why that maybe not be the best idea to do so, even though Roman Burke is still one of the better players, if not the best player on the St. Louis side. Disappointment. I'm gonna go with Simon Betcher. You would have thought that I would have gone with a defender here, but I'm actually gonna go with Simon Betcher, and this is actually a very unpopular pick. And I know there's gonna be some St. Louis fan will not be happy that I picked Simon Betcher as a disappointment. And I think that there's a point that they can make the fact that yes, he did get better as the season goes along, especially under David Critchley. To be fair, a lot of attacking players got better under David Critchley. I mean, when Olaf Melber was in charge of this team, I mean, all the attacking players, it just feels like not only they did not contribute, but the system that Olaf Melber run was kind of the main reason why the attackers didn't really contribute. I mean, that defensive kind of style, it just feels like it's almost like a shackle that is chained on this attacking team, and it's no wonder why the attack didn't look so good and looks completely different because once Dave Critchley gone, it feels like the shackle was freed off all of these attacking players. But I know some St. Louis fans will say that Simon Betcher did get better as the season goes along, and in some way, he definitely one of the things that he did that kind of also help both the other attacking player is that he kind of free up space of the attacking player. He does a good job in terms of that. But again, at the end of the day, he is a number 9, and one of the things that you always judge on is the production level that you created. And when you look at the production level that Simon Betcher has created compared to last season, yeah, it's been a huge drop off. It's been a huge disappointment with how good he was in the latter part of last season. I thought this season it would be a step up, especially if the fact that he's still a relatively young player as well. But yeah, he definitely did not keep that growth that he showed potential last season as well, and hopefully maybe that will turn around heading into next season as well. Now, young player to watch for the St. Louis side, I'm gonna go with Brendan McSorley. So this is a guy that you probably have not heard about in the beginning of the season because this is a guy that actually didn't bring in to St. Louis until the latter part of the season. But when he was finally in the first team, kind of graduated from their MLS Next Pro team, which, by the way, there are a lot of talented MLS Next Pro player from the St. Louis side. And this is not a big surprise. I'm also kind of interested to see, like, for St. Louis, will they really heavily rely on their academy and also leaning for their homegrown as well? Because St. Louis, in general, this region could have a lot of good talented player. I mean, this region it's such a historic soccer kind of culture that goes back for over a century. You would assume that this team would really heavily rely on that on that homegrown, and I feel like they definitely should be, especially of the way that their MLS Next Pro team has been a juggernaut in the West year in and year out. And Brendan McSorley is one of the biggest reason why when he finally got the call up to this team, you can clearly see that this guy is a star that could be born in the future. He looks really dynamic going forward in the attack, and also look very clinical in front of goal as well. He could be a guy that I think will get more minutes heading into to next season as well, and especially whoever the head coach that they of course hire, if that is a head coach that believe in young players, I wouldn't be surprised if McSorley might get more minutes, especially again if they do decide to move on from Joe Claus, maybe McSorley might get get more minutes as a resort in playing that number 9 spot. So what went right for the St. Louis team? Well, yeah, fans got finally got their wish of asking for Lutz to be fired from this team, and you know things have not gone well for a team when the fans are openly cheering that for their GM to be ousted. But that's kind of how it is. I mean, fans were getting very frustrated of how Lutz was operating this team whatsoever. Part of the frustration, of course, born out because of the Olaf Melber hiring. That hiring was just so wrong to a point where, yeah, I mean it kind of spiraled downward to a point where fans openly want him to be gone from this team, and they definitely were very happy that he was gone with this team. Although in terms of the situation, as I will talk about in just a bit, and also the timing, it just kind of feel a little bit off, in my opinion. The team, of course, was way more entertaining to watch in the second half of the season. Big part of that is because the Dave Richley system really opens up this team in the second half. And then the other thing that I think went right is somehow they were still in the playoff race longer than I thought. Hard to believe, but this team was still somehow in the playoff race deep in the season. I mean, you would have thought that this team would be done and dusted and would be eliminated back in September, but they were still in the playoff race heading into October as well. Obviously, eventually they got eliminated from the playoffs, but they definitely show some fight late in the season. And you know, the one of the big reason why they were in the playoff race for a bit is the fact that they did had a little bit of a resurgence in the second half, just like what we saw last season as well. And when I mean last season, I mean 2024. So what went wrong with this team? Yeah, a lot of things went wrong with this team. I mean, the Olaf Melber era was an absolute disaster, and I don't really need to go too deep into it because I'm pretty sure St. Louis fan know how that era went and was a big part of that led to the Lutz ousting. But even when Dave Critchley came in, again, I know that this team was much more fun to watch down the stretch, but it doesn't mean that this team was any better as well. And I think the reason why it wasn't any better for St. Louis, even under Dave Critchley, is that once Dave Critchley decided to kind of open it up a bit, it basically masked the big issue that this team has. This team has had a defensive issue for the past couple of years, and the fact that they really haven't done a good job in terms of fixing it. I mean, they try to do so with some of the signings, but because some of these defensive replacement has just not worked out whatsoever, you can kind of see the problem with this team. And I think this is also kind of maybe where you got to at least go maybe defend Olaf Melber, the fact that yes, I know he makes this team very boring, but it kind of feels like it was necessary because if they played the style that Critchley was playing, it was no wonder why this team was leaking goals left, right, and center in the second half of the season. Once the team become more open, you can clearly see that there wasn't as much protection as what we see under Melber playing that low block that seems to be much more harder for teams to break down against the St. Louis side when they go on this low block that is. But once they free things up, yeah, the defense doesn't have that production. So on one hand, it definitely make the team much more entertaining to watch and make the attack much more fun to watch. But on the other hand, that also means that the defense, which was already bad heading this season, well, that problem was all to be seen because of it. And I don't think St. Louis fan would mind that because they kind of knew that was going to be the case. I mean, if you had to choose between entertaining soccer or the boring style of soccer that Olaf Melber implement, I think St. Louis fan will probably choose the latter. And then, of course, injuries, of course, were a big problem for this team, especially in the beginning of the season. They had a lot of injuries that kind of crippled this team. Also, kind of symbolize how the fact that this team just does not have a lot of good depth whatsoever. That's going to be something that they're going to have to address this off season. Speaking of this off season, moving forward for this team, obviously they will be very interesting to see who, of course, will be the next head coach. They're definitely taking their times in terms of finding the right replacement, and they should be. I mean, I've said many times before how a head coach can be huge in terms of determining whether a team is good or not. So many times throughout the season, we see that when teams don't get the right head coaching, don't get the right personnel, it just does not work whatsoever. And I feel like for St. Louis, this is probably more important than ever before, the fact that they just need to get the right head coach. On paper, this team can definitely go places and definitely has the talent to do so, but it doesn't really matter if they don't have the right head coach and the right system to kind of mesh this team to get themselves back to where they were in the expansion season when they were week in and week out the best team in the West. the other thing that will be very interesting, in terms of who's going to be the next head coach, is going to be picked by the new sporting director, Corey Ray. I really like this hiring. I thought he did really well doing his time with Columbus, and then he also did pretty well even when he was with Toronto FC as an assistant GM as well. Obviously, I know people will point out that he definitely didn't do so well during his time with Montreal, but again, like what I said before, you can ignore that kind of tenure because pretty much not many people can go to Montreal and do well. I mean, that's pretty much almost a death sentence when you're a GM trying to work in that ownership group that is one of the most notorious when it comes to penny pinching and become cheap. There's no doubt that I think Corey Ray is going to get the backing from this front office. But the problem is that when you look at the roster that he gets to work with, he doesn't really have a lot of margin to work with this roster. And a big part of this is the fact that they are pretty much maxed out on their DP spot. And I think they are no, they actually have one U22 initiative spot open because Chris Durkin, of course, graduated from that spot. So at least they have that flexibility as well. But besides that, they're pretty much maxed out on those premium spots. Now, obviously, it can still be open up depending on if they decided to get rid of some of their U22 type of player. Joe Klaus is a player that I mentioned, even though he's not a U22, he is a DP. He's a guy that I think they might be looking to move on to open up a free DP spot. Obviously, the other DP, I don't think they're going to move on. They're not going to move on Roman Burke, consider that he just signed a contract extension not long ago. And then obviously Marcel Harto, I don't think they're going to remove him as a DP. He was definitely one of the more impact attacking player for this team. So yeah, again, there will be maybe some flexibility if they can sell some players or maybe use exercise a buyout or two there in the off season. But as of now, it just feels like they don't really have a lot of flexibility in terms of the premium spot that is. And again, a big part of the reason why they don't have that premium spot is, the team that is built right now. This is still a Lutz team. All the players that is on this team is still under the old regime. And when you have a new GM coming in, and you have a bunch of players that is still under the old regime, and especially when I also look at their end of season roster move, it feels like they're keeping the old a lot of the guys from the old regime. That is kind of a very surprising move to do because anytime when you have a new GM, you would assume that new GM would just come in and start to call his shot and maybe get rid of players that he don't think it fit. Now, obviously, that maybe could be the case this offseason. And that kind of leads to the final point of the fact that are they going to go through a teardown and rebuild or go through a retool and reload as well? And it's not an easy question to answer as well because there are both sides in terms of it that you can say Corey Ray could go. He can definitely go through a teardown, which is just kind of maybe get rid of the core player as the off season and maybe even heading into next season will go and just commit to rebuild. But at the same time, I wouldn't blame that he decided to go for a retool and reload because again, when you look at the roster that is, it is a talented roster if it has the right coaching and the right system that is. And knowing Corey Ray has done a pretty good job in terms of getting the right head coach in, and especially with the way that he also comes from the CFG system, a system that means that is more predominant in terms of working the ball, and maybe that's kind of a system that St. Louis could do well. Especially we kind of saw a little bit of that under Dave Fritchley. Maybe this, of course, would work out where they don't really need to go through a complete tear down and rebuild, and they'll just think, well, this roster maybe have potential. We just need to add a little bit more pieces, and especially fix the defense a bit. That this team could definitely get themselves back to where they were in their first season. But yeah, next season there's going to be a lot of question I think for the St. Louis side, and that if you're a St. Louis fan, let me know in the comments below what is going to happen in to next year as well. I really feel like this is kind of like the first season where there's really a lot of unknown with this team. I mean, when you look at previous season coming off of that season when they finished first place, there was a lot of optimism that next season was going to get better, but yeah, obviously that didn't happen. And then even heading into their third season as well, with their great run to finish the second half of the season, it looks like there was that optimism, the fact that this team would get themselves back to where they were looking in their expansion season. Obviously, that didn't happen whatsoever. So heading into this year, it just feels like. I mean, I know St. Louis fans are not going to fall for it again like they did last season. The fact that the team got hot and then yeah, things kind of didn't work out heading into the next season. But this also means that it really leaves a lot of question. What is gonna be this team, and what are they gonna really look like heading into next season? It can really go either way heading into next season, in my opinion, and I think that might be something that St. Louis fans might think that that could be the case. But let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this moving forward series, and if you're a St. Louis fan as well, what do you think is the MVP, disappointment, young player to watch, what went right, what went wrong, and moving forward, how is this team going to look heading into next season as well? But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.